Okay, now we're going to talk about finding the domain of a given function. Okay, usually the domain has to be given to you for you to know what it is. Okay, so instead what we're going to be finding is called the implied domain. Okay, this is what's implied by the given function. We don't know for sure that this is the case, right? The domain depends on what the situation is, right? What is being modeled. Okay, typically you see a function because they are modeling something, right? At a certain point in time, I was so many miles away from home. Okay, where in that case, domain would have to be some interval of time between 0 and 3 hours or something like that. Okay, here we have stripped all context, right? We have no context. All we know is this is a function. Okay, so what is the implied domain? All right, so in other words, what are the numbers that you're allowed to plug in for x? Okay, let's think about the x values on this giant number line that spans from negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. Okay, those are all the x values that you can plug into this function. Now, usually you can plug in anything without there being any issue. Okay, the only time you run into a problem is if you divide by 0 or if you have a negative under a square root or a fourth root or something like that. Okay, so I really just want to check to see, are there any restrictions? And again, by restrictions, I mean I don't want to have 0 in the bottom of a fraction. That's a big no-no, right? And I don't want to have a negative under a square root. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking at this for fractions where I could potentially get 0 in the bottom or square roots. I don't have any of that going on here, so I have no restrictions. In other words, this number line represents all the x values I'm allowed to plug in. So that means that my domain is all the numbers from negative infinity to positive infinity. And I'm writing this out in interval notation. Okay, this represents this number line here. You start as negative infinity as your lowest point. You go all the way to positive infinity as your highest point, and you always put parentheses when you're dealing with infinity. So my domain is negative infinity to positive infinity.